Hey guys, welcome back. Your Tech Admin here, and today we're going to be looking at replicating the Windows Game Bar or NVIDIA ShadowPlay DVR functionality in Linux. And we're going to be doing that using a pretty familiar piece of software called OBS Studio. So the first step to do this is going to be to actually install OBS Studio. This is going to depend heavily on the distribution of Linux that you're using. I'm using Linux Mint here, so I just installed it through the Software Center, and specifically I installed the package that is in my distributions repository versus the Flatpak version. Either one should work fine, but there may be some slight differences on a later step if you're using the Flatpak version, so just keep that in mind. So once you have OBS Studio installed, you'll want to open it up. You'll get a screen similar to this. You won't have this background here. I just set this so that it wasn't just a black square. But once we're in OBS, the first thing we're going to want to do is go down here to Settings, and then we're going to select the Output tab here on the left. So in here, there's going to be a few things that we want to set. The first one for recording is going to be our recording path, and this is where our videos are going to be stored. I have mine set to a large hard drive. It's actually a RAID array, so you may want to store this somewhere other than your primary hard disk, especially if you're using an SSD. The next thing you want to do is set up your quality and recording format settings. In particular, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you want to make sure you have NVENC enabled. This will offload some of the video processing from your CPU over to your GPU, and it'll make things run a little better for you. The next thing we're going to want to do is click this Enable Replay Buffer button. This is the feature that's going to enable the DVR-like functionality within OBS. So once that's enabled, you're going to get a few other options here that you can set. The first is going to be your maximum replay time, and this is kind of like basically how far back the video will save when you hit your hotkey. So I have mine set to 30 seconds. That seems to be a pretty good spot, but you can set it as high as you'd like. The next thing you want to do is set the maximum memory. This basically specifies how large a single file can be. And you're just going to want to make sure that this file size is large enough to accommodate the settings that you've set here and here. So for these settings with a 30-second clip, I found 4 gigabytes was plenty. I never ran over the maximum memory space, so we were good there. Okay, so that's all we need to do in the Output tab. So the next thing we're going to do is hop down to the Hotkeys tab. In here, there's a couple of hotkeys we need to set up. The first one is going to be the Start and Stop Replay Buffer. And you'll see I have these both bound to the same hotkey, and that's so it just acts as a toggle. If you want separate shortcuts for these two options, you can set them up separately, but setting them to the same hotkey will make it a toggle. Now you'll want to set this to something that's not going to interfere with any system shortcuts or shortcuts in any of the games that you're playing. In my case, I chose a pretty long one, Control Alt and then a number. And the reason I chose this is simply because I have a macro keyboard. So I have this hotkey bound to a single macro key on my keyboard. So once we have these set, we're going to scroll down and we're going to set the replay buffer shortcut. So this is going to be the key that we'll actually press to save the last X amount of seconds of screen recording. Okay, once all that's set up, we can go ahead and close the settings box. And the last thing we'll want to do is set up our source and scene. So by default, you should already have a scene set up. So you'll come over here to sources and you'll press the add button. In here, you're going to want to select screen capture. You can give it a name if you like. And then in this next page, you're just going to make sure that you have your primary monitor set as the screen that you're recording. This will be the same screen that all of your games open up on as default. Once that's set up, you're going to want to make sure that the source is enabled. You can do that by clicking the little eyeball down here in the sources. And you should see a preview in the main window. Now that we've got all that done, it's basically ready to go. You can click on the OBS icon down in the tray. This will hide OBS to the tray, and then you can use the shortcut keys to enable and disable the DVR functionality as needed, and the second hotkey to actually save the recorded footage. So at this point, you could launch your game, play as you want, and then hit your save key for any memorable moments that happen, and it will be output straight to the folder that you selected in the settings panel. Now there is one more step that we can do here to make this just a little bit better, and that is to make it so that OBS runs at startup. And to do that, we're going to open our menu and search for startup applications. This program may be different if you're running a different distribution, particularly if you're using a different desktop environment. Startup applications is the default for most GNOME-based distributions. If you're running a KDE-based distribution, it may be called something different, but they're all pretty similar. So in here, we're going to press the plus button to select a new custom command to run at startup. And this is the command we're going to want to use. So OBS just launches the OBS application. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you're using the Flatpak version, this part of the command is going to be different for you. You're going to have to invoke the Flatpak executable with the run parameter and then the name of the Flatpak package. I'm not going to go too deep into that in this video, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to help you down in the comments. And of course, you can just Google it, and there's tons of tutorials on how to set up Flatpak applications to run from command line. So now, just to cover these two parameters, they're pretty self-explanatory, but this first one here starts OBS minimize, so that way the window doesn't pop up when you start your computer. And the second one here starts the replay buffer automatically. I actually don't use this second one because I don't want my replay buffer running all the time. I usually only enable it with my hotkey when I'm about to play a game. But of course, that's totally up to you. If you want the replay buffer to run all the time, you can add this parameter and it will be enabled as soon as the computer starts. So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it into the command section here. And we're going to give it a name. OBS is pretty simple. You can give it a comment if you want. You can set a startup delay if you want, and then you'll just press add. As you can see, I already have it set up here. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure this little tick box is enabled. And then you can press this little play button here to test it to make sure it works. When you press this, an OBS icon should appear down here in the task tray. And that's all there is to it. Now when you're playing your game, just make sure your replay buffer is enabled, and you can press your hotkey to save the recordings at any point in time. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. I'll get back to you and answer as soon as I can. Until next time, guys, take it easy.